If we're going to try to understand unmasking, the very first thing to do is define masking. Unfortunately, that isn't especially easy to do. Here's what it says on top of the page when you Google autistic masking. Autistic masking, or camouflaging, is the conscious or subconscious suppression of natural autistic traits and adoption of neurotypical behaviors to fit in, avoid stigma, or navigate social situations. It often involves forcing eye contact, scripting conversations, and suppressing stimming, which can lead to extreme mental exhaustion, burnout, loss of identity, and delayed diagnosis. There isn't any definitive list of things autistic people might do or say that sums up what masking is, because masking can be different for everyone in every context. On the most basic level, masking is what happens when there is a conflict between what a neurodivergent person is naturally inclined to do, say, or feel, and what they think a neurotypical person expects. And that sense of expectation wins. Whatever the neurodivergent person does from that initial motivation, trying to conform to what they think a neurotypical person expects, the thing is a form of masking. It's a very nuanced topic to delve into, and there's a whole video essay about it on this channel already. I won't go on too long about masking, because this video essay is about the opposite, unmasking. SparkNote's version of the other essay. Masking can look like anything in the world, except for the person wearing the mask. There's no simple, tidy way to define exactly what masking is, or what it isn't, because looking at it from the outside it can take virtually any form. Now we've spent a whole paragraph saying the first thing we have to do is define masking, which can't be done. But that's only a problem looking at it from the outside, and trying to understand it in a top-down, outside-in, neurotypical sort of way. It might be possible to figure out what unmasking is in a bottom-up, inside-out, neurodivergent way. The first thing about the term masking, which I think gives the wrong impression, is the sense that the mask is a single thing that can be taken off all at once, and there's something else underneath it. I haven't found that to be true. In my experience, there's no fully fledged neurodivergent person waiting behind the mask, ready to be revealed when you take it off. Much of the time, I don't know what is mask and what isn't, because the fact of masking is too ingrained with my thoughts and behaviors on every level for me to see or understand the whole scope of it. Think of it like when you see a uniquely shaped tree in the woods, with lots of burls and knots, making the grain snake in different directions, rather than run in straight lines. There's no single mask to take off of that tree. There are dozens or hundreds of separate things which have been present in the grain for years and years. The tree has grown around them in complex ways that make it hard to fully say what are natural parts of the tree and what aren't. Nobody could answer exactly what that tree would have been like without the outside forces that caused it to grow in the ways it did, and the tree itself can't simply decide to shed all of those effects at once. Removing, or even just identifying, those things would be a long, involved process, not something as tidy and well-defined as taking off a mask. Unmasking is the same. The initial stages of it are often a series of mind-bending realizations about things which you didn't know were masking, but are. Some examples for me were scripting conversations and making a list of notes. I didn't recognize those as masking because writing notes to myself about what I was going to say before making a phone call or something like that felt like an obvious and natural thing to do. So putting unnatural amounts of energy and detail into those notes and scripts never registered as anxiety or a reflection of difficulty navigating the conversation. On the flip side, I didn't recognize the mental energy I was pouring into suppressing stimming because the masking around that included masking the impulse and the suppression of it from my own conscious notice. There was no straight line connecting not stimming to being mentally exhausted all the time. So it wasn't simply a matter of removing a mask and seeing what's underneath it. I hadn't consciously put the mask on in the first place, and of course I didn't know what was below it. You can see how it's less like dropping a mask, and more like the long process of finding things inside the grain of a tree, and slowly building a larger understanding of why the grain runs the way it does. For me, it was a matter of taking a lifetime worth of confusing and frustrating things that had no apparent connection to each other, and realizing they all made perfect sense together in a unified theory of everything, and then having to gradually rethink everything from the ground up through the lens of that new theory. That isn't the same thing as simply dropping a mask. Something I've experienced firsthand and also heard other people say is that they got worse, so to speak, or their autistic traits got more intense once they knew or understood what those traits were, and had stopped pouring energy into suppressing and hiding them. For me, I think when I subjectively saw myself getting worse, I was actually just becoming progressively more aware of things I had been unaware of. It's like how when you're in a good mood, you don't notice when your jacket gets snagged on a doorknob. You just flick out your hand and unsnag it without giving it a second thought. But when you're in a bad mood and become fixated on every little extra annoyance, you notice it intensely when your jacket snags onto the doorknob. The conclusion you draw is, I only snag my jacket on a doorknob when I'm in a bad mood. That's an illusion created by where your attention goes. And getting worse was also an illusion created by where my attention went, as I was trying to reorganize everything under a new theory. I think that's another problem with the term masking. Someone who puts a mask on knows they're doing it, so it doesn't convey how much someone who's masking can be masking things from themselves at the same time as masking them from the outside. When I thought traits were becoming more intense, it was because I was becoming more aware of whatever level of intensity they already had. Again, there was no apparent connection I could see between things I was masking and how intensely mentally exhausted I was all the time. The idea of dropping a mask might fit the reality of it for some people in some contexts, but keep in mind that it's only a starting point. It's a simplification that gives you the gist of something, not a full description. Sometimes the mask isn't apparently there at all. It's an absence or void, or a series of blind spots where awareness should be, rather than a tangible thing that can be put on or taken off. If the idea of dropping a mask is only a useful simplification to give the gist but nothing more, then a more complete description of unmasking would be something about a journey of continuous internal cartography, where the starting point is accepting the person you are, not a broken neurotypical person who is flawed in a random constellation of confusing ways, but a whole neurodivergent person who is being uncovered piece by piece through a progressive realization. So the final point to make in this video essay about unmasking is that unmasking is a misnomer. It isn't as much about revealing something hidden as it is about becoming integrated. It's about aligning internal reality with external expression, and that expression sometimes means showing traits that were previously suppressed, which is where the dropping the mask image comes in. It's the only part of the process which neurotypical people looking at it from the outside actually see, so it's the only part of the process that gets a common name. The way I think about it, the goal of unmasking is not to stop trying to navigate the world, but to reduce the relentless isolation and mental exhaustion that come from hiding yourself from yourself and from everyone else. The goal is also to reframe the journey in a way that acknowledges the inevitable tumult and confusion of the first steps, and then ultimately finds a sustainable way of being. The goal is also to shift the focus from what am I suppressing to what am I learning about myself. If you want more video essays like this about other aspects of autism, and also specifically about being an autistic writer because I'm an autistic writer, so I did the very meta thing of writing about being autistic and writing. There's a playlist on the channel called Autism and if you want to catch more of these in the future, remember to subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notifications for new videos and the YouTube algorithm starts serving you more of this kind of thing. Until next time.